Welcome to SATSANG. Let's take just a few minutes together. Allow the eyes to close gently. And just allow your attention and awareness to pull from the world outside to the world inside. Draw the awareness to your breath. Just allow your awareness to merge with your breath as it flows in and flows out. Don't change it. Don't judge it. Just become fully immersed in awareness of it. If thoughts come, or sounds or sensations come, don't fight them off, but don't allow yourself to be distracted by them. Just keep drawing the awareness back to the breath. If you find that the mind still wanders, you can add a very simple mantra to it. You can chant so, hum. So on the inhalation, hum. On the exhalation, silently to yourself. So, hum. It means I am that. I am the creator. I am the creation. I am one with the universe. So, hum. And as you immerse your awareness in the breath, notice the way that border and boundary between you and the world outside starts to dissolve. As you breathe it in on the inhalation and breathe out into it on the exhalation. Notice how you really are one with both the inner and the outer. And as the breath flows in and out in an unbroken cycle, notice how there really is no inner and no outer. It's just all self, breathing into itself and out to itself. So allow the full awareness to be immersed so fully in the breath as it flows in of itself and flows out unto itself. That there is nothing other than the breath. Slowly bring your hands together at chest level and rub them gently against each other. Place the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. And gently open your eyes and lower your hands. Welcome to SATSANG. We'll begin with a question that's come in advance as we didn't get to any of them yesterday, and then open it to any questions that anyone here may have. Do perceptions affect truth? We all experience impressions differently, believing what we see or hear or smell or touch or taste to be real. Others experience it differently. Is one experience more true than the other? So here's the situation about perception and about truth. You can't see the way that the question is written, but you'll notice that it's got the capital T, truth. And that's important because our perceptions and our sensations do not impact the capital T, truth. But they do impact the lowercase t, truth. So for example, I'm going to make a statement, and then you get to decide whether you agree with that statement or you don't agree with that statement, okay? And those of you who agree, you'll raise your hands. Those who don't agree, you'll raise your hands. The spicier the food is, the tastier, okay? If you agree with that statement, that the spicier the food is, the yummier it is, raise your hand. There's no right or wrong answer, by the way. If you think spicy food is really, really tasty food, raise your hand. Jitna bhi mirch ho itna acha. Okay. Those of you who do not agree with that statement, raise your hand. Okay. So the only thing this proves is there's lots of difference of opinion. Now, each meal, if we all go together into the dining room from here, some people are going to think that the food is super, super, super tasty because it's not very spicy. Other people will think, oh, it's not very tasty at all because it's not so spicy. If he makes it a little bit more spicy for the people who think it's not quite tasty enough, then suddenly all the people who don't think that spice is so good start to say, oh my God, the food was so tasty before, now it's so spicy, it's not so good. Okay. Point being, there's a simple question that can be asked at the end of the meal, which is, was this a tasty meal? Good food or not good food? Well, as we've just determined, the answer to that is going to be based on whether you are someone who thinks that the spicier it is, the better, or someone who doesn't think that. If you love mirch, और वो खूब सारे मिर्च डाल देते तो आपको बहुत अच्छा लगेगा बहुत स्वाद. मिर्च कम लगेगा आपको तो लगेगा कि बहुत फीकी है. You'll think it's tasteless. Is there even the possibility of a truth? Of course not. This pertains to everything that our senses tell us. There is no absolute truth with regard to what our senses tell us. This is where that's our lowercase t truth. Is something beautiful? Is it not beautiful? Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it nice? Is it not nice? This is all dependent on our own sense of perception. It cannot possibly be true or not true. The capital T truth is that which is not dependent on our senses or our perception. The dilemma comes that most of us know the world only by our sense organs. And this is where we end up really stuck. So for example, science says, or the way that most of us understand science says, it only exists, it's only real, if I can see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it. If it has a weight, if it has a volume, if I can look at it under a microscope, if I can look at it under a telescope, then it exists. If it doesn't exist, it's not real. So we've created a situation where the only things that exist are things that we can know with our five senses. But what we also know is that nothing our five senses tell us can actually be absolute truth. Somebody smells something, they say, this smells like chocolate cake. Someone says, no, it's not chocolate cake, it's cookies. Somebody says something is too hard, somebody thinks it's too soft, somebody, right? This is where married couples, friends, you sit in a room, somebody says it's too hot, somebody says it's too cold, somebody's opening the windows, somebody's putting on a sweater. Is there even a truth? Is it hot or is it cold? Of course not. It all has to do with my own perception. How my particular experience on my skin, how it travels to my brain, what message that gives me. So we've created this really tragic situation where we've said the only way that we believe something is true is if we can know it with our five senses. But that which we know with our five senses doesn't give us the ultimate truth. So here we find ourselves in this very interesting catch-22 situation. So, yes, our perceptions, our sensations and our perceptions absolutely determine our truth. But that's the lowercase t truth. That's, is this person beautiful or ugly? Are they too fat? Are they too thin? Is the meal tasty or not tasty? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? Do I have enough money or not enough money? This is all based on my values, my own mind. That's my lowercase t truth. But the capital T truth has nothing to do with perception. Interestingly, it also has nothing to do with our senses. And this is where science inevitably fails us. There was a time a couple hundred years ago where if you were sitting in a science class and the question was, is the earth round or flat? And you wrote flat, that would be the right answer. And if there was a question that said, does the sun revolve around the earth or does the earth revolve around the sun? And you said, the sun revolves around the earth, that would be true. Now we know that in the last couple of hundred years, the earth has not gone from being flat to being round. We know the shape of the earth has not changed. We know that in the last few hundred years, the solar system has not gone from everything revolves around the earth to everything revolves around the sun. What's changed? Simply our tools of measurement. A few hundred years ago, we didn't have very good tools. The tools we had made it look like the earth was flat. Look out on the horizon, it looks very flat. It ends right over there. And the sky starts. When our eyes are our only tools of knowing, yeah, sure, the earth is flat. And look, the sun, it rises. In the east, it sets in the west. I see it with my own eyes. Of course, it's revolving around us. Every day it does the same thing. It comes up over here, it goes down over there. I'm staying put. The sun is moving. What's happened over the last few hundred years is that we've developed in science much better tools. And so now we know, okay, Earth is not flat, Earth is round. And actually, not only are we revolving around the sun, but we're revolving around our own axis. We're not sitting still. We're spinning. And that is our lowercase t truth today. In 200 years, are we going to have a totally different truth? And are they going to laugh that 200 years ago, yeah, they thought the earth was round? Yeah, they thought everything revolved around the sun? Who knows? But what we do know is that our truth with regard to science is based entirely upon our tools. And whether our tools are our own senses, or our tools are our telescopes or our microscopes, it's based on our tools. The better the tools, our truth keeps changing. But capital T truth, ultimate truth, cannot possibly be based on tools. Capital T truth is not about, you've got a telescope so your truth is different. You're blind, your truth is different. There's no truth for blind people, truth for non-blind people, truth for people with Indian taste buds, truth for people with Western taste buds. If it's capital T truth, it has to apply to all. So that's actually how we know whether it's capital T truth, eternal truth, or lowercase t truth. If it varies from person to person, if it varies based on your tools, if it varies based on your senses, if there's even the possibility of there being a different opinion about it, it can't possibly be eternal truth. Now that doesn't make it wrong or bad or small. It just means it's my truth at this intersection of time and space. This is what we call truth. But when we meditate, that's when we go within and we actually touch a space that is beyond time, beyond space, beyond tools, that's not about what my eyes can see. Because here's the question. So I know this very sweet young boy. What is your name? What is your name? Come here. Okay, what is your name?
Akshaj.
Great. Now, I know that he exists. How? Well, because I'm touching him. I can feel you. I know you exist. How old are you?
8.
Okay. So I can also hear him. He just spoke. I heard him. Did y'all hear him? He said he's 8. My eyes are open. I can see him. I see this beautiful young boy. I can't smell him. Must have had a bath today. I'm not going to lick him. But if I did, I'd be able to taste him, especially if he had maybe some of his lunch still on his cheeks. But I've got only 5 ways of knowing that he's here. My eyes, I can see him, I can hear him, I can touch him, I can smell him, I can taste him. If I take my hand off him and I close my eyes and he doesn't speak, well, did he cease to exist? Did he cease to exist in that moment? Of course not. But I had no way of knowing he exists. My only way of knowing he exists is through my senses. So my senses are not creating him. when I took my hand off him and I closed my eyes and he didn't speak, I no longer knew that he existed. But he didn't cease to exist. Did you disappear for a few moments? You sure? 100% pakka ekdam. Okay. So we know that even though I no longer could touch him, see him, hear him, that he didn't cease to exist. So my way of interacting with him does not make him exist. It just means I am aware of his existence. His existence is evident to me. That's what we use our senses for, is to make the world evident to us. If I can see it, if I can hear it, if I can touch it, taste it, smell it, it's evident to me. Maybe I don't do those things, but maybe I have faith in a religion, in a guru, in a person, in a teacher who says to me, this exists. So I don't have any personal way of knowing that the earth is round. I've never been in space. I've never actually looked down on it with my own eyes. But I have faith in those who promise me that the earth is round. That's how things become evident to us. But what about the self? When we talk about knowing the self, so how do you know that you didn't disappear, by the way? In those few moments, when I took my hand off you and I closed my eyes and you said you didn't disappear, how do you know? Kasi malo. How do you know you didn't disappear?
Because I was here.
Because you were here. I'll stay really close so you can talk in my mic. Because I was here. Well, how do you know you were here?
Because I exist.
Because I exist. Who knows you exist?
Everybody.
Everybody. Good. But if everybody closes their eyes, then how will everybody know you exist? Then only you will know you exist, right?
Yeah.
So how do you know you exist? How do you know? Don't worry, nobody else knows the answer either. This is what our spiritual path is about. Who's the I that knows I exist? How do I know I exist? Because here's what's really interesting when we go deep. I see myself, right? But the eyes I'm using to see myself are part of that same self. My eyes are part of my body that is being used to see my body. So you cannot use the same tool to prove that the same thing exists. Science doesn't like that. If I'm only using my 5 senses to know that I exist, then really, that's what we call the cyclical reasoning. Well, I know I exist because my eyes can see me. Well, how do you know your eyes exist? Because they can see me. Well, all right, this is not getting us very far logically. How do I know I exist? What makes me self-evident? Who is the I that knows I exist? This is what we meditate on. There's not a right answer. I'm not looking for you to yell out a word. The question is the path. take that question and go in. Who knows I exist? Because if you tragically went blind, or you had a horrible accident and you literally lost your eyes, well, you still would exist. You could actually lose all of your senses and still exist, in the same way that I can close off all my senses and he still exists. I just lose my ability to interact with him. So you could lose all your senses, which would prevent you from interacting with the world, but you wouldn't cease to exist. You wouldn't even necessarily cease to know you exist. You could lose your senses without being brain dead. So as you meditate, find a place that is truth beyond because I can see it, smell it, hear it, taste it, touch it. And begin with the self. Because once you realize, and you don't have to come up with the word, don't worry, a lot of us are a little overly educated, overly intellectual, overly verbal, and we end up in this cycle of, well, I've got to know the word for it. Don't worry, you don't need the word for it. As long as you can have an experience of being self-evident. Do you know you exist with a part of you that isn't your five senses? Do you know you exist with a part of you that isn't because someone tells you you exist? And if so, who's the you that knows you exist? And when you touch that, just the experience of it, again, don't lose yourself in trying to name it, because then that pulls you out of the experience into the brain that's looking for a word. When you have that experience, it enables you to move through the rest of the world with a sense of being able to interact with the world at a level that is much deeper than just your five senses. And that's what actually makes us able to touch that capital T truth. Otherwise, we spend our entire lives only having access to the lowercase t truth. And if we want access to the capital T truth, we have to find the I that knows I exist, that knows you didn't disappear, even if everybody closes their eyes. And it's beautiful because even at 8, he knows, yeah, I exist. Even when we can't see him or smell him or touch him or taste him or hear him, of course he exists. And that part of him that knows he exists is that part in us that knows we exist. And that's the part that enables us to touch an I and a self outside of this that isn't dependent on the senses and that isn't the physical body. Because the physical body can only be known by the senses. This glass of water can only be known by my senses. But if I want to know the essence of the creation of water, if I want to know the essence of the consciousness of me that is one with that water, the five senses can't do that. And that's where we go deep. So before taking any of the other questions that came in advance, I'm happy to open it up and to take any questions that anyone here may have, if there are any. Yes.
Can you give a detailed answer between two words, Jiv and Atma?
So what's the difference between Jiv and Atma? So Jiv, and interestingly we also talk about Jiv Atma, but at the moment we'll talk about just Jiv and Atma separate. Jiv is that which takes birth. Jiv is the root of Jivan. Jivan means life in Hindi. So Jiv is that which takes birth. I come into this world. I'm sustained in this world for some period of time. I've got a particular form. Okay, so he has this beautiful form at the current moment of an 8-year-old boy. I have the current form at the moment of a 48-year-old female. Different Jivs. He came into this world in a different place than I did. He came into this world through a different pathway than I did. Totally different manufacturing plants, you could say. Okay? That's the Jiv. That's this body. But it's not just the physical body, it's the whole aspect of who I am. My package in this lifetime. Atma is soul. Atma was never born, never dies. Atma doesn't come from a manufacturing plant. Atma doesn't have different makes and models and colors and cultures and religions. Atma just is. The Atma, for a specific period of time, utilizes a particular body, a particular life, in order to go through its karmic package. Now, this starts to get into very, very deep and esoteric levels of philosophy, and we don't have time to go too deeply, but the Atma itself, the soul itself, ultimately on the highest and deepest and truest level, there aren't even individual souls, there's just soul. But on the level when we talk about reincarnation and rebirth, that which goes from one Jiv to the next Jiv isn't only the Atma, it's also Man and Ahankar. The mind and the ego. So that which travels with us from life to life, that which carries, you could say, our karmic package, our karmic suitcase from one life to the next life. And so we take on that subtle body, takes on a physical body, a gross body, a Jiv, in order to work out its karmic package, its karmic bank balance. Because the way that karma works, or the way that rather fruits of karma work, the word karma literally means action. Each action has a repercussion, a fruit of karma. Those fruits go into what you can think of as a karmic bank account. On the most superficial, basic level, we can call it positive and negative, but that's really superficial. But for the sake of the discussion here, we'll call it that. The positive fruit is going to bear, or the positive actions are going to bear positive fruits. The negative actions are going to bear negative fruits or bitter fruits. Sweet fruits, bitter fruits. In a normal bank account, all right, we're going to test your 8-year-old brain. In a normal bank account, if I put in 5 rupees, okay? So I have 5 rupees in my bank account. And then I take out 3 rupees. Do you know how many rupees I have left? How many?
2.
Wow, great. Did everybody hear that? 2. Great. That was wonderful. Thank you. Okay, so in a normal bank account, what I put in and what I take out, they overlap. If I put in more than I take out, my bank balance is in plus. If I put in less than I take out, my bank balance is in negative. The bank starts sending me all kinds of nasty letters. But karmically, it doesn't work like that. So karmically, if you put in 5 positives, you're going to end up with 5 sweet fruits. If you put in 3 negatives, you're going to end up with 3 bitter fruits. They don't cancel each other out, so you don't end up simply with 2 good fruits. We end up having to keep coming back life after life, taking on physical gross body after physical gross body until that bank balance is 0. So that's what this process is about, and that's where in the Gita, when Arjuna finally says to Krishna, well then, okay, so what is the answer? If good deeds give me positive fruit and bad deeds give me negative fruit, but in either case I have to keep coming back to eat the fruit, and if ultimately the goal is not to come back, then what to do? And this is where Lord Krishna says so beautifully, just surrender to me. Realize you're not the doer. Realize I'm the doer. You are a tool in my hands. So that whatever you're doing, instead of it being about your will, your desire, surrender to me. Realize you're not the doer. And that's where the whole teaching of surrender in the Gita comes. That we do the action, but without the attachment to the fruit. So we're not counting how much is going in my bank balance. Is it going to be sweet? Is it going to be bitter? We just do it as tools in the hands of the divine. And that becomes the way for that Atma to finally be no longer encumbered by having to keep coming back, and to, just as we say, attain moksha or oneness with the... You can think about it as sort of the drop merging with the ocean. That it all was ocean. The water evaporates. Some water evaporates, gets carried by the cloud, gets dropped on the earth. Different places, different coverings, different identities. Some of that water comes down in the sacred river.
Thank you.
Of course. Some of it gets carried down in the sacred Ganga River. We bow to it. We do its arti. We worship it. Some of it drops in the sewer. We plug up our nose. We sweep it away. We say, Gandhi Baat. But both of those drops, ultimately at the core, are ocean. The highest truth of both of those drops of water is ocean. They've come from the ocean. They've been carried. They come back down. Now slowly, 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 they're merging with the ocean. All of the water on earth is returning to the ocean, through our groundwater, through our rivers, ultimately into the ocean. In the same way, divinity, soul, singular, one, ends up getting evaporated, you can think metaphorically, into this cycle of samsara, this wheel of birth and death. Takes the form, woman, Indian, or our 8-year-old boy. Different parts of the world, different karmic packages, different forms. But ultimately at the core, like all water is ocean, ultimately at the core, soul, divinity, consciousness. And slowly, slowly, lifetime after lifetime, we are going back to that state. But the last and really important piece of this is that moksha, that liberation, isn't something that has to happen when you finally are free of the body. Because it's not the body that ultimately binds us. Yes, our karmic bank account is what makes us keep coming back and taking bodies, but the body is not the bondage, the mind is the bondage. And ironically, mind comes with you. So everybody who thinks, let me just be free of this body and then I'm done, is in for a not so pleasant surprise. Comes with you. And that's actually what causes our suffering. There's pain in the body, but the suffering is in the mind. So if I fall down and I hurt myself, pain in the body. But the mind that says, oh God, that's not fair. Why does that always happen to me? I hate this stupid life. Why? I never get anything I want. I was just about to go on that vacation. I've been waiting 10 years to go on. Now the stupid staircase. I told that maid to be sure to dry the stairs. She never does anything that I want. And I don't know why we can't hire a better maid. And suddenly, suffering. There was just pain in the body. Simple fact. A fall. Wet stairs. But the mind creates the suffering, the story, the drama. So the mind is actually that which keeps us stuck. And this is where all of our spiritual practices are all about. Work with your mind. Work with the mind. Because it's always there with you. When you're awake, when you're asleep, when you finally go into the Maha sleep, it's still there. So you work with the mind. Surrender. Surrender to God. Realize, all right, thy will be done. Let me be this instrument. And then the physical body becomes simply a beautiful, beautiful way of interacting with the universe. These 5 senses become ways of interacting with this extraordinary creation. And yeah, sometimes there's physical pain. But if the mind doesn't create suffering around it, then we're actually able to move through the world loving the body, loving existence, knowing it's temporary, but enjoying it while it lasts. The sunsets, the flowers, the music, the touch, the taste, all of what the physical body brings us. So it's not about rushing to be free of the body. It's about doing whatever we can do to get the mind to stop creating suffering. Then, still have a jiv, but that jiv becomes blissful. That's when we talk about jiva mukti. Mukti, moksha, freedom, while living in the body. That's jiva mukti. But it comes only through freedom from the mind, freedom from the games of the mind. It's not freedom from the body, it's freedom in the body, but freedom from the games of the mind. Living in the body, but as the Atma. That's the Gyan.